Greetings, peeps, and welcome finally to the IHU 101, the podcast. We are finally up and running after a plethora of technical difficulties and scheduling issues and all kinds of issues. So I'm very happy to present this episode for our IHU 101 students and our IHU 101 the podcast audience. I'm very happy to finally be back. It's been a while, so I know you're going to enjoy this episode. This is the first in this series, so for the fall semester 24, we are going to have two. We are waiting on some video processing for our second podcast performance that you, the students, will get to view. And then, of course, you will again get to submit questions to the artist. In this situation, we had the conductor of the Midland Community Orchestra, Miss Gina Provenzano. She is my guest on this episode of IHU 101, the podcast, so we'll get right to that in just a second. Just wanted, though, to reiterate to everyone about what's been going on. I do apologize for all the delays, but finally we are here and finally we get to present this podcast episode. There will be a second, so just be patient. It is there. You don't have to do anything for this one. This one is just for you to watch and to listen and to get to hear your questions presented to the artist. So I look forward to your comments. And I look forward to you getting to enjoy this particular episode of this broadcast of IHU 101, the podcast. Don't forget, all of those who view, please hit like and subscribe, and we'll have more to come. So without further ado, thank you very much, and let's watch this episode. Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to IHU 101, the podcast. Thank you for joining us and thank you for all those subscribers out there and of course to my IHU 101 students. We're very, very excited today because we get to have a wonderful guest, Ms. Gina Provenzano. We're so happy to have you. Thank you so very much for being here with us.
Thank you.
And we're going to get to the questions issued by the students, but just for our audience, just to sort of reiterate what happens is the students watch a performance of the artist, and then after watching the performance, they come up with 1, 2, 3 questions to ask the artist on the podcast interview. So all of the students have had the opportunity to watch the Midland Community Orchestra concert that just recently happened, and they have submitted some wonderful questions for you. But before we get to those, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role as the conductor of the Midland Community Orchestra?
Well, I grew up in Michigan. I went to the University of Michigan, studied in Maine for my master's degree. I lived in Chicago and Maine and came back to Michigan about 10 years ago. And I had been getting involved with youth orchestra in Maine with the Bangor Symphony. So when I arrived here, I wanted to do more conducting at an adult level. And they allowed me to come in and audition, and I got the position and have been having a great time.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, and I have been, I won't say I've known you for 10 years, but we've been acquaintances, let's say, for about 10 years. So it's great to be able to have you here for the podcast. Let's talk a little bit now about the concert, and you chose some very, very interesting works, but I want to get to the one that's probably the most familiar to everyone, and that is the Beethoven. And most of us are aware of the motive. In fact, you sort of alluded to that when you introduced the work. But can you tell us a little bit about the preparation for that for the community orchestra? How challenging was that for you, for them? And then did it come out the way you had hoped it would?
So the Beethoven, for us, that's very difficult music. We're just a community orchestra. I have a few kids in there that are advanced level, and then I have elderly people who have come back. They're in their 80s. They haven't played for years, have come back. Over the years, we've progressed to being more advanced than we were when we started 10 years ago because we do screen people when they enter the orchestra. So as we do, usually when I put a concert together, we don't have an intermission. So I try to make it, if we played a whole symphony, it's 45, 50 minutes, so that's the entire concert. Our concert's only about an hour and 15 minutes. So I never wanted to really do that, and a lot of symphonies to our audience, which is more people that maybe don't go to official orchestras, so they don't want to hear a full orchestra or a lot of slow music. So I'm really careful about my repertoire, what I pick, so that my audience will come back. But the orchestra, they wanted to play a full symphony. So over the years, the last couple of years, we played the first movement once, and 2 years ago we played the fourth movement, and I love Beethoven's Fifth. So I thought, well, that's perfect because we've already performed and worked on 2 of the movements because we only have 8 weeks, 8 rehearsals, 8 hours, so or 2 hours. And so I was like, well, at least we've prepared those somewhat, and the majority of my musicians are returning every concert. So I knew I could get away with it that way, time-wise. So we just went for it, and it ended up, I'm very happy. I'm grateful that my musicians practice as much as they do, for being community members that work all day and then come out at 7:30 at night until 9:45 p.m. Seriously, I've got really committed people. I've had people that have been in there the entire 33 years. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. And so for them to put that much time into that piece, along with the other pieces, which was difficult as well. Sure. Originally, I had planned to do it in April because we had more rehearsals in April, more time. And when you start the season, it's a little slower than later when you're already going. But one of my percussionists could not play, and in the April, or the concert, the music I was going to do in the fall. So I needed to switch that music to April, and I was like, well, I'm going to do the Beethoven. So we pushed it with, I think we had 7 rehearsals in one section.
That's amazing.
So, yeah. And so we were very happy. We were happy we got a standing ovation, and I think the musicians were very happy with it. Yeah.
That was great. It was a great performance. And then the other composer you highlighted was Prokofiev, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then, and if I memory serves, this was the first time you had performed a full symphony with the Midland Community Orchestra, so congratulations on
that. Thank you. It's the first time anyone has, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
and they've never played a full symphony.
Awesome.
That's why they were so excited.
All right,
yeah.
That's fantastic. So, for the benefit of our students and our listeners, sometimes people don't realize the organizational structure of orchestras. We don't really cover that in this course. I do in my music appreciation course and some of the other courses, but I wanted our students to be aware, with this being a community orchestra, your players don't receive a salary, is that correct?
Correct, they're all volunteers.
Right,
yes.
And I think that's amazing
yeah.
in itself that they volunteer their time, because in symphony orchestras and Philharmonia orchestras, they are paid positions, they are paid players, which is great, but
service,
yeah, it's
yeah, we're all volunteers, and what my goal is also is that our concerts are free. And that has been my stickler, because I know how expensive orchestra can be, and I want everyone to be able to come to a concert. And so we are keeping it free as long as we possibly can, and all we have is donations. That's all we have. It's great. We're lucky we can.
So now let's get to the questions. So first question is, how have your experiences as a performer influenced your approach to conducting, particularly in terms of working with wind sections in the orchestra?
Well, I'm a clarinet player, so I played professionally. I played in college at U of M. I'm lucky that I was in all of the groups as I matured. So I did concert band, I did the marching band, got to go to the Rose Bowl, all that stuff, did the orchestras. And by watching all those conductors and working with as many groups as I played with, I was principal clarinet in the Bangor Symphony. And the year that I started, they were interviewing, so auditioning a bunch of conductors. So I was lucky to work with, 6 or 7 the first year that I played. And just watching how they work with people, that's how I've learned, just observing and going to a lot of rehearsals and a lot of performances and just watching. As a wind player, it's nice that it's different, because you're sitting around everyone, so you're hearing all of what's going on and all of the instructions and all of the how do you do that, and so it's a little different than sitting in the string section.
Sure.
So it gives me that advantage. However, I'm not a string player, so then that's an issue. Always people are like, how can you conduct an orchestra without being a string player? Well, because there's a bunch of all different musicians in there, so you learn all of it. I've taken lessons and you study, and when you have a great concert mistress like Susan Mercy,
Sure.
we work together.
Sure, and I think it's important to point out that conductors often, and myself included, you'll consult with your first year principals and
yes, always.
bowing and things like that are always important issues.
And obviously you can't, if you're a clarinetist, you're going to be an expert on that instrument. And it's even like private lessons. I never recommend students that aren't going to study with someone who actually plays the instrument, because you've lived that instrument for years. So
Sure.
you know all the tricks. So when I'm up there conducting, I'm not going to speak over someone who plays trumpet.
Right.
They're going to know the tricks.
Right.
They're going to know how to fix things.
Right.
So,
Right. Well, that just makes for a wonderful performance.
yes.
So, what factors motivate you to include certain pieces in your programming, especially in the context of engaging both the musicians and the audience?
Repertoire to me is really important, and I spend a lot of time doing it every concert. There's so many angles of that. First, you have to know your level of musician. You can only do so much. And if you have, for example, and this doesn't mean my player's bad or anything,
Sure.
but if I have my principal cellist can't play, well then I can't feature the cello. And you have to be careful, because in music it's not the whole piece, it's just the section, but that 8 measures can be super important. So if that's not there and you don't have a cellist that can play it, then you're in trouble. So that's the first thing. You have to pick repertoire that's going to work for your musicians. The audience is then, of course, super important, because you want them to come back. And like I said earlier, if you don't have the pieces that make them want to come back, they're not going to come back. So I have to be careful. Your audience is different. If you're working, like I conducted the Lawrence Symphony for 7 years, and if you conduct that group, they were kind of the same thing, that they were having trouble with tickets. So of course you had to bring in, do the Star Wars and that. But then I always try to put in something else for the people that are more serious about music, the ones that are professional musicians. So you have to be careful with that as well. What else did you want to know?
Well, you've answered it, but the fact that in the context of engaging.
Yes, and female composers, that's kind of my passion. I'm shocked I never, as a student, did I ever play a female composer piece, and I went to U of M. Never did we discuss them, because the great composers were men, because women were not allowed to compose, or if they were composing, we didn't get to hear their music. So that's kind of been a shocking revelation to me. Like, I never realized it, because I never really thought about it. And as a female conductor, I was like, wait a second, because I have issues with that, because I'm a female conductor. It's hard to get your foot in the door. So I started just kind of researching a bit about women composers, and like there's books out there that help you pick music out. That tell you the repertoire and what instrumentation and stuff. And the book is like this fat, that's like an anthology. Everyone uses it, and there's like 20 female composers in it. So it was mind-boggling to me that I didn't realize that. So I started researching, but what's difficult about it, it's hard to find music, because it's expensive. Because they didn't publish it, it's not in free domain, it's not out there where you can easily get it. So it's actually a really big challenge. And for a community orchestra, it's a huge challenge because of the cost.
Sure.
For example, I wanted to play a piece for our next concert, which I unfortunately could not find a female composer that we could afford for our next concert that fit in. The piece was 2 minutes long, and it was going to cost us $500 to rent. And I tried so hard, because I'm saying, we're a community orchestra. How are you going to get this music heard if the community orchestras aren't playing it? But the publishers own it. So it's expensive, because they have it. So there are a few places where there's a place now that's making some music that's available, but they're full symphonies, or they just don't fit for us yet. So I'm always working on that to get that in there, because I know other orchestras don't. And
Right.
if you could look it up.
Yeah.
Look it up. You'll be surprised how few orchestras. For a while there, they were pushing the female composers, but now it's kind of fallen back again, and again, it's hard to find the pieces, so it's hard, it's difficult. There's a lot of choral, which is nice.
Yes.
But I don't have a chorus to work with.
Yeah, well,
So in the future.
I understand.
Yeah.
I have faced that same dilemma with choosing literature, because you want to be inclusive.
Right.
And sometimes that's very difficult, and in particular with choral literature, just because the great bulk of it is still composed by men.
Yeah.
Once in a while, you'll get some wonderful little jewels, I call them, that were composed by female composers, but they're few and far between. And so I'm sure you go through the same thing. Because you want to program great stuff and you want to attract your audience, but you have to be judicious. Yeah. Now that is something else. I'm glad you brought up the cost. People don't realize
They don't.
you don't just get free music.
No, you do not.
Yeah, you have to pay for it. It is usually rented, and it costs quite a bit. So
We're lucky. We're part of a library that we pay a fee to be part of, so we can use each other's music, and that's the only way we survive, because we can get. A lot of times the music's like shredded pieces of paper, but we can make it work as long as we can play it.
You have to do.
Yeah.
You have to make do with what you can.
But for the last concert, we played the piece by Ethel Smith, and that piece was, a gentleman had edited it, and it was only $90, so I was able to get it.
Awesome.
And for us, the community orchestra, it's hard to rent pieces, because when you rent pieces, you can't use them again.
Right.
So how do you justify $500 of a very small budget to play a piece once? It's hard to justify. So I do my best on trying to find what I can, and but yeah, I was really hoping to play that piece. It's a great 2 minutes of different fun music. But,
Well, hopefully in the future that can come back.
And my board's very supportive, which is nice. We have they're supportive to a couple of times. We have put out the $400, $500 for a piece, which is nice, but we can't do it every concert.
That's also something I think would be very interesting to our audience, in that, as I was mentioning before, we have this organizational structure to these organizations. Even at the community orchestra, there's a board that's made up of members of the orchestra, I'm assuming, and perhaps others, perhaps some people that have some special ability to help with things like financing and just the day-to-day operations of an organization like this. And so Gina isn't the only one who makes all the decisions. In fact, sometimes I'm sure you come up against some opposition.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes, but usually it's pretty good.
Well, yeah.
They're solid. They're solid with me.
Hopefully they support and they let you.
Yes, they do. They really do.
That's awesome.
At times, though, and sometimes, it's hard, because being a musician is much different than running an organization. And so they don't understand what's behind the scenes, and they don't understand what you already know or what you've already done. And sometimes it's difficult that way. They don't quite get it, and politics are huge in music.
Oh, yes.
So when you have people say the wrong thing at the wrong time, it can really haunt you. So you have to be careful of that, very careful to.
Agreed. This brings up a memory. I can't tell you the number of times I've had administrators say, "Well, just put on a concert."
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just whip that out.
I'll just put it up tonight.
No, that's right. No problem. It's easy. I can do
like
this.
the repertoire. People think it's so easy to pick repertoire. It will take me weeks to pick a concert. Weeks. And people, they just don't understand. Yeah.
No, there's all the preparation and planning prior to even the start of rehearsals.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have all of that. You can't just
months
right.
Right.
You can't just have it all on the day of.
And the flow of music too is really important for repertoire. You can't have all slow music for a concert. You have to be really careful to go, fast, slow, and so that it's not all slow music. And they have to end. You can't end big on your first piece. You've got to end big on your last piece.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Right. Got to give people something to grasp onto at the end. So this question is kind of one of these thought-provoking ones, but what is your favorite performance or specific piece you have conducted during your time with the Midland Community Orchestra?
Boy, my favorite. I don't know. That's kind of I will say that with the community orchestra, I really enjoyed we did a Halloween concert with the kids a couple years ago, which we'll be doing again next year. They had never done that before. We had costumes and all that. But we did Wicked, and it was a great piece. So we had fun with that. And I mean, there's so many pieces. I mean, that's a pop piece. I tend to like the loud, big finales, the big sounding, or super beautiful, emotional, just breaking your heart. So,
sure.
But I don't think I really have a favorite. It's just
fun, it's
you know?
funny. I think just about every artist I've ever had on the show has been asked that question by the students, what's your favorite?
Mm-hmm.
And it is so hard to
Yeah.
narrow down because
Right.
we have a lot of favorites.
Right, and it's really not about the piece itself, it's about the moment. It could be two measures
Yes.
that you're just like, oh, that was so beautiful.
Yes.
And that's why you keep doing it.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah. I don't know that I could narrow any one specific performance or piece of music down.
And I can remember when I played with the symphony in Bangor, there were two, I can still remember this, the best moments I ever played were these two beautiful moments in Beethoven's Third with my part, the other player. And it was like, oh my gosh, that was so beautiful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was kind of funny.
Yeah, well, and those are things that are meaningful to us, and I try to also explain to my choral students in the choral ensembles to say, I don't choose literature that I just like. I have to choose stuff that I think is going to be both challenging for the ensembles, but also appealing to the audience. I'm sure you go through
For sure.
the same types
And
of
sometimes
pieces.
it's hard because I have musicians that say, I want to play this piece, I want to play this piece. But if I don't love it, I'm going to live it for many, many weeks. So it's sometimes I have to say, I'm sorry, I just can't do that piece.
Yeah.
I don't love it enough. I can't do it because, as you know, you don't just do the music, you study the music.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
which I mentioned at the concert with the Beethoven.
Yes.
It was so fun to read, to study that score. For those of you that don't know, the score shows, all the parts listed, so you can see what the flute's playing, what the oboe's playing, what the trombone's playing, and what the strings are playing. And to see how he, changed
Put
just
things
a little
together.
rhythm,
Yes.
just a one little note, it's fun to look at too.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
And then to bring that out with the musicians, it's fabulous.
Something that this particular course wouldn't be aware of, but when we look at other works of art, sometimes you do catch what we as musicians refer to as a motive or motif, and it'll be used again and again throughout the work of art. Even in sculpture, you can find thematic ideas that are repeated. That's what we're referring to. If you look at this Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, he got a lot of mileage out of 4 notes.
I sure did.
So, yeah, it's something.
Yep.
Okay, so this question deals primarily with you as a musician, and I'm kind of interested in what your response is going to be. How has teaching band or music in different schools and states contributed to your success as a conductor?
Well, teaching band, I was able to learn all of the instruments. You had to know, at least somewhat about each instrument, So I remember I met a conductor once, and he didn't know what percussionists did, the rudiments, and I was like, how can you compose and how can you conduct it? But you don't have to know, like I said earlier, you don't have to know everything about it, but you should know something about most. So being a band director, I learned, and I also did jazz, and I also did chorus. So I did all the general music, the whole gamut, college, the whole thing. Doing that, I got to learn different personalities, first of all, how to work with people of all, of every age and every whatever, but you learn, just how people respond to pace. I think that's a huge thing for me when I conduct in rehearsals, is my pace. I think people like my pace. What I mean by that is I don't talk really slow. I don't have a lot of pauses. We just go. Next measure, and I plan. I'm a very good planner because I always had to plan for my groups. You know, you only have 40 minutes in class or whatever, and the kids come in, you have to get ready, go, you know, that kind of thing. So I think, and I had a really good teacher in college, Robert Culver, who taught about pace, you know, you have to do that. No glitches, make sure you keep moving, you know, that kind of thing. So I think that's probably a big part I learned. And also being on boards, school boards and orchestra boards and, you know, learning from those different groups, booster clubs. You learn to work with people and you learn to, you know, that kind of stuff, behind the scenes kind of stuff.
Sure.
And the planning of concerts, you know, when you do a bunch of performances, you're running the show for all those concerts, you're doing the programs yourself, you're doing, you know, backstage, you've got your crew, so that kind of stuff, you learn all of that from doing that. You know, then you put it all together, and so it's easy for me to say, you know, oh, we need to do this for this concert, don't forget this in the foyer, don't forget, you know, all of that stuff.
Sure. And I think also teaching in public school sort of teaches you to think on your feet. Because you know, even you can plan, but something always comes up, and you have to, like, okay, we got to adjust, or, you know.
And quickly, you know, a story. This is a funny story. I had a performance once in this auditorium, which we were at a different school. We used this auditorium, and we had everything set up, everything, decorations, everything. And I was sitting there, and a rat ran through the auditorium as we were leaving to go home and then come back for the concert. And I was like, we cannot be in this auditorium. And, you know, I went into the office with the principal and my principal, their principal, and they just could not make a decision. And I was like, we need to move it to the gym, put this, you know, do this, this, and that. You know, you have to think quickly and just go with it, you know. So.
Sometimes bureaucracy gets in the way of that.
Yes, it does.
I know. So within this is an interesting question. Within the orchestral performance, do you focus more on strings, on winds, percussion, brass? I already know what your answer is going to be, but I think it's great for them to ask this question. But do you find that you focus on any one specific group more than the others?
Sometimes it depends on the musicians. If you have a musician who is nervous, you know, I'll look at them way in advance, give them a little smile. It's okay, you're going to be okay, you know, that kind of thing. So that's part of it. But you're really focusing on whatever part is being featured at that moment. So if, you know, I know, or what's coming up actually. So if I know there's a trumpet solo coming up, then I'm getting ready to cue them in the right direction in a confident way so they know they can play it, you know, that kind of thing. So it really just depends on what's going on in the piece. It's not like I'm focusing just on the strings, but I will focus on them if the music at that point is about them.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what made you focus on clarinet versus other instruments for yourself personally?
Very simple. We had the instrument. My sister played it and she quit, and so my parents had that instrument, so I started that instrument.
That's great.
Very simple.
That's great.
Yeah.
And it works. It works. So I have to include this comment from a student. These were wonderful performances. I enjoyed them all very much. And this is not the only student who made that comment, but I wanted you to be aware.
Thank you.
As a conductor, what are your favorite genres of pieces to conduct, especially for performances that you will be able to share with the community? So do you have, I know we've kind of addressed this, but do you have a favorite genre that you like to sort of stay within the framework of with respect to community orchestra?
Not really. I mean, again, it's just, I like to create a concert, so really the genres are all different throughout the concert. So I really can't pick a favorite. I mean, I like them all, you know. So I'm not as thrilled with contemporary kind of dissonant sound things, you know, the stranger pieces. Those are not my favorite, although that one female composer I was going to do was going to be. You know, but in general, I just kind of like them all and just kind of put it together.
Very well said.
Yeah.
Thank you. The same student asks a second part to the question. She says, I'm very excited to hear about the addition of the youth program. So far, has this had good community support and a good turnout of youth in the community?
So far, we just started last year. And we're just feeling our way through it, again, finances are always an issue, so we only have so much money, so we can't publicize, that kind of stuff. So the kids that have participated and the parents are very thrilled. I just have to get the word out,
Sure.
So, but it's a challenge because the budget requires us to have it rehearsal before our rehearsal. So we arrive, there's 6 mentors that help us, so we arrive at 5 o'clock and we finish at 10. So it's a long 5 hours, but it's working out nicely. The parents are supportive. We have a snack for the kids, that kind of thing. But my mentors, we call them mentors, they come in, and myself, it's a long night. It's a really long night.
And all volunteer.
Right, all volunteer. And then for the concert last year, we had the kids play with us. So our concerts ended up being too long because we added 20 minutes of music, and I never wanted that. I didn't want to take from our adult group because the idea was just to get people to know about it. So now this year, when we took that away, it's just the kids. Now it's like there's only 100 people at their concert because now they're not with us. So that was kind of but I was happy to have the 100 there, which was really nice.
Right.
So the kids will play with us one piece in the spring, so that will be fun. But so far it's going really well. The kids are just a blast. I love working with kids, and they're learning so much. It's so fun to watch. They came in, they come in especially in the fall because it's the first session. They're afraid, I've got kids that cry, and it's fine, and we've got great mentors and we're fun with the kids, so it goes away really fast. But they have to play alone in front of us, and they've never done that, so they come into a room and they're really afraid, some of them, But then, and afterward, they've never played in an orchestra, so they're used to just playing at home,
Right.
Any speed they want.
Right.
They never have to, play, stay together. So now it's fun to watch them after, like, the first session. They're all these mature kids, know how to sit, they're confident. It's great. It's a great opportunity for kids.
What a great legacy you are creating.
I'm hoping it keeps going.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And along with that, where are you rehearsing?
We rehearse at Midland High School.
Okay.
In the band room.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
That's great that you can
Yeah.
use that.
Yeah, we
space.
rent the facility from them, and they're really very helpful to us. It's
Good.
not too expensive. It's not expensive. It's nice. They just let us. So, and the
That's
band
good.
director's wonderful. So
That's great.
That's it.
That's great. This is another one of these introspective questions. This student is asking, when did you learn and when did you discover that you had such a strong love and passion for music?
For music, well, my father is he played drum set for a polka band. So in Detroit with his brothers, and for years we'd go to see him play all the time, and I always loved to dance, and I always loved to go to those events. So I think music was just part of my life. My mother was a piano player at home. She did just for fun, but she loved music and she loved the classical side of music. So I had like kind of this well-rounded family that loved music. And then when I got into playing, I think what really made me want to get into music as a conductor was my band director was absent, and he was going to be absent. He said, will you conduct the kids for me? Because he had a sub, which the sub doesn't know how to conduct. So I was like, sure. And the moment I stepped up on that little podium, it was like, this is amazing. I just loved it. And that was it. I was hooked forever to do that. So I went to Interlochen too as an all-state member when they used to send us to camp in the summers. And I had Larry Radcliffe.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. And he was just amazing and running around, jumping around, and he just inspired me to be exciting. And,
Very energetic.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's honestly I've taken that with me like always with my students and stuff. I always try to give that hyperness, get them excited, make them happy. Have fun. I always tell them everybody, have fun.
That's
That's
great.
what it's about. Put the work in, but then
That's
have fun.
needs to be
Enjoy it.
enjoyable.
Yeah.
Absolutely, needs to be enjoyable.
Yeah.
So Let's see, I'm trying to, I don't want to overdo. Some of these questions are obviously, some of them are identical. So here is a great question. Does the University of Maine have a better music program than the University of Michigan?
Well, no. I could say no, but it was a good program, a very good program, and they tied in, the Bangor Symphony is in Maine. Bangor is about the size of Midland, and their symphony is pretty much the equivalent, maybe a little bit more advanced. Their conductor's a Grammy Award winner,
Sure.
Lucas Richmond,
Sure.
and he's wonderful. And because it's Maine, it's a little different because in Maine the big cities are only in certain places.
Right.
So everybody would come to Maine to play, so they would bring in people from outside to play in the symphony, and so the university had a lot of players that we performed at the university, so you had connections and tie-ins and
Kind of like Ann Arbor, I would imagine.
yeah, exactly, but just on a smaller level.
Sure.
So so it's a smaller level, so it's not going to be advanced. At U of M, I think they bring in more international, and they from all over the country. It's easier to recruit because it's U of M, and University of Maine it's a smaller school, so
Sure.
but a good school. It was a good education.
Do you ever miss living in that area?
In Maine, oh yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful state.
I've only been a couple of times, but yeah,
Yeah,
it is
beautiful
very
state, and people are really nice, like really wonderful. I always laugh because when I have triplet daughters.
Oh wow!
Yes,
had no
yes,
idea.
I do. I have triplet daughters, and when we lived in Chicago, and we moved to Maine when they were 1, and we moved to this town, and I had this triplet stroller that I would have to actually hook on the back of my car, take the wheels off, like a bike.
Sure.
Right? And I got to this town, and this guy was standing there, and I'm like, what is he doing? This is coming from the city. I'm like, what is he doing? What is he doing? And I'm all nervous, and he was just waiting to help me with my stroller.
Oh my gosh!
And that's
Wow.
how the people were.
Yeah.
And it was always like that, and I love that.
That's fantastic.
And it's a beautiful, it's beautiful, Maine is beautiful. It's just, if you can ever go to Bar Harbor and go on that coast in the national park, do it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, I've heard it is a gorgeous, gorgeous place.
It is
I've
beautiful.
only been to Bangor twice,
Yeah.
and it was I was passing through actually, and our flight got diverted twice.
International, yeah.
So yeah, it was, but yeah. I have to ask. So how old are your daughters now?
27. Yep.
Wow.
One just got married, so.
Congrats.
Thank you.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you always want to have a job in the music industry, or was there a specific moment that you decided this is what I want to do? Now I know I think you and I both share that love of conducting. I too was asked to step up on the podium as a student, and so that's when I thought, yeah, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. But was there something that led you specifically that said, yep, this is my job, this is what I want to do, I don't want to do anything else?
It's really the teaching aspect. I wanted to teach, and I enjoy teaching, and I like to work with kids, And so the day I was like stepping up there, I was like, I'm going to be a band director. I can teach this. This is what I do. And I loved playing my clarinet, and I had been to all the camps, Blue Lake and Interlochen and all of that, and just really loved that teaching kind of atmosphere. So sad to say that when I was at U of M, I never was really encouraged to conduct. It was more about, and again, I'm a female in that time where it really wasn't something we did, believe it or not. And I really resent that now looking back, because it wasn't until I was in Maine and I was playing in the Bangor Symphony, and I was their educating coordinator for the Bangor Symphony. And I started to do their youth orchestra. We formed a youth orchestra. I co-founded it with the director, and there were 2 of us that did it. We had like 90 kids involved. It was great, and that's where I really found the love of, I love to do band, and why am I not doing this? And I wish that I would have been encouraged. I really do wish that years ago that I would have been like, hey, you could do this too.
Right,
so
right.
I'm always kind of like a female conductor supporter, because
Sure.
it's very disgusting that there aren't many.
No, I agree.
You know?
I mean, even in my experience with choral conducting, it is much the same. While you do have, I had, fellow students, colleagues that were conductors in their own rights and fine conductors in their own rights. The head of the program was a man, the associate was a man. Mm-hmm. Now, we did have, at the University of Kentucky, where I received my doctorate, we did have Lori Hessel. Mm-hmm. She's phenomenal, and I will sing her praises from now until the end of time. She was just excellent mm-hmm. musician, as well as excellent conductor. But she kind of showed me that how difficult it was for a female to make it. Yeah. And she had the support of her husband, who was a physician, and she had a lot of support from her professors. But she told me herself, and I believe she went to Michigan State, that she was not always encouraged. Right. Mm-hmm. Which, yeah.
I think things are changing, thank goodness. I mean, there is a lot more, but you don't realize it until you realize it. You don't realize that, oh yeah, how come all of the high school band directors are male? And it's not like that anymore, but I'm older. But it's like, if you look back, that women had children, so they had to step out and they couldn't do the Friday nights, Saturday nights, all day Sunday, because of band camps and all of that for marching band. And, so it ends up being a lot of the males. And then it's what we call the good old boys club, and it's really hard. And you go to events and you're looked at like, and you're thinking, what the heck, you don't even know me, you don't even know what I've done. Like even now, if I go somewhere, and I've conducted professional orchestras, and it's like, they'll judge me just because I'm not one of the good old boys. That's really annoying. But again, it's so much better now. I'm just saying, it used to be really bad. But it's a struggle, and if you look at the professional orchestras now, one is, Marin Alsop was like the big one for a long time. I think there's maybe another two that are maybe at the high levels, of the big orchestras. Right. And we're even talking with guest conducting. Very rare, but it's getting more and more, which, so hopefully, we've created the path for the future.
Yes. Well, hopefully I can help with that as well. Great question here. How does the historical context of pieces of music, such as the original composer's life and views of what the music originally used to express, influence your decision around using these pieces? So I think what they're asking is what about the composer and the composer's personality, their life, their history, how much of that influences your choices?
Honestly, it should influence it more, but it doesn't. I typically go by the music. If I love the piece, and then I research it. It's usually not the other way. I don't say, oh, I want a composer. Sometimes I guess I do that. Like if I'm looking for Italian composers, I'll look into an Italian composer's life, but usually it's I like the piece, and then I go and later do that kind of thing. Sure. So I don't really think that's
sure. No, I get it, but I think too it's important for our audience to know you do research.
Oh gosh,
the composer.
Yes.
I think you have to.
Oh yes. And what the piece is about too. You research what the piece is and what it represents and everything too. So, and I actually find it really fun because you find out the weirdest stories about these people. You have no idea, and how they're so connected. A lot of them are so connected with, it's crazy.
Right, especially if it's as historical as this person is suggesting, like what was going on in history at the time this person was composing the work. Right. Or in the case of let's say, Handel, what was going on politically in England at the time. He was, the first time he offered Messiah.
Right.
Which apparently wasn't such a great thing.
Yeah, a lot of times it's not a great thing. Yeah. And a lot of them have history, like they're doing it on purpose to stick it to somebody or, or to a country, and then you're like, oh, so,
Agreed. Do you feel your formal education or your lived experiences contributed more directly to the knowledge you use on a day-to-day basis?
Probably the lived experience. Definitely going to the rehearsals and watching rehearsals and meeting with people, getting to know people, talking to the soloists that come in, and that kind of stuff really you learn much more.
Sure,
You know,
sure,
so,
sure.
yeah. I mean, you obviously learn a lot in school.
Yeah,
but
you
you
do.
have to, but you know.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
It's the practicality and the practicum that you learn out in the field that stays with you. I mean, yes, you certainly draw, I think, on the things that you learned in school, but yeah, and building relationships always
And
important.
I will say, you can't do anything without that school knowledge. And they're not gonna look at you, you know,
Right.
for sure.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
And nowadays, you should have your doctorate, so keep going, because that's been haunting me.
So are you, I was going to
I have
ask,
my master's, but not my doctorate.
are you thinking about,
I wanted to go back when I first moved back to Michigan, but to get a music doctorate, there's only a few places you can go, and you really need to live there, and I really couldn't. You know, I had children, we lived in Alma when we moved back, and so I couldn't really get to Michigan State. It's an hour and 15 minutes, and every day, you know, so it's been, you know, I wish I could do something online, but that doesn't really exist. There's very few places where you can get your doctorate.
Sure.
So, and it has hurt me. There was an opening nearby here that I couldn't apply for, which I find insane. But I wasn't allowed to apply because I didn't have my doctorate. Now that's really stupid. I mean, they really should, sorry to say stupid.
No, I get it. I get what
But
you're
I
saying.
mean, it's seriously, you should look at experience, because Leonard Bernstein didn't have,
Agreed.
you know, a doctor or a master's, or, you know, yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's just kind of a crazy thought to me that, you know, I've done K through college level teaching in all aspects for years.
Sure.
You know, and then conducted a professional orchestra, community orchestra, started youth programs, and I wasn't allowed to apply for a position where they teach people how to teach.
Sure.
You know, crazy to me.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I went through that struggle myself when I was, I completed a master's and I was told you're not going to get a collegiate position, which was my ultimate goal, until you have a doctorate. And so I went, you know, searching around the country for various schools, and I literally had to move to the city to get my degree. And you know, I had a wife and 3 children, and
Right, and that goes back to women too. Like, how am I going to leave my 3 daughters to go stay? And you know, it's just not. It's not possible. Like, I mean, people do it. I get it, but you know, when your husband has a job too, you can't just pick up and leave.
Right.
You know, so it's unfortunate you can't do that easier somehow. Maybe in time now, since COVID and all the online classes, maybe that'll open up more. But really, how do you learn if you're doing conducting, how do you do it without a group? You have to, you know. But I even have my own groups. You know, it's like, seriously, can I do something? But you know, but that's why.
well,
And the cost is crazy.
Oh, yes.
You know, so yeah.
But hopefully you can pursue that, and you know, I certainly think you are worthy, and I certainly think that you could easily do it. So
Well, and I think I have a lot I could teach people.
yeah,
You know, students
absolutely,
and stuff. So.
absolutely. All right. So final question, and this is another thought-provoking and introspective, I suppose, but. I'm often asked this question myself, and it's a very difficult one to answer, but the question is what is your favorite part of performing in your current role?
Performing
As a conductor.
as a conductor. My favorite part for me is when I'm done and the musicians are happy. Because when you get done, if they're not happy, they went, you know, oh, they worked so hard. And to have them feel that they weren't successful, that's so sad to me. It's so hard to watch because they try so hard. And when they come out and they're like, yeah, we did it, you know, we nailed it, then I'm really happy.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that makes me really
It's
happy.
a reflection on you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Dina, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much, and best of luck to you and the Midland Community Orchestra. I certainly hope we will be able to do this again, and would love to have the students see more. I promised MCTV, that I would plug MCTV.
Oh, nice. Oh, they're wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you, MCTV.
Yes.
They do our live streams for us.
Yes.
I do. The nursing homes are a big deal for me. I try to get my groups out into the nursing homes because I know those people are so lonely.
Yeah.
And so we got them, they live stream it for us, which is really nice. It's a lot of work for them to come in and do that for us. And we're very grateful.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And I promised our managing director, that I would say they're always looking for volunteers.
Always. I say every concert. And it's a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
I get to learn how to do cameras, you know? So
it's great.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to share with our audience with respect to either the Midland Community Orchestra or yourself personally, music in general, music education?
Well, please tell people about us, because we're always looking for musicians, but we're also free concerts, and I really love when kids are brought in. I'm not one of those people that cares if the kids cry. I want them there. I mean, they are a future audience. So if you can get the word out for our youth program, that's our hardest to get the word out. 6th or 8th grade or younger if they're good players. But please bring the elderly with you. I always offer up, please check with people who can't drive, because the concerts are free, so you don't have to pay for them, and bring them along.
Fantastic.
That's it.
All right.
So.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of IHU 101, the podcast, and our wonderful guest, Gina Provenzano, conductor extraordinaire of the Midland Community Orchestra. Gina, thank you once again for being here with us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great.
Love makes me treat you the way that I do. Gee, baby, ain't I good to you? There's nothing too good for a girl that's so true. Gee, baby, ain't I good to you? Bought you a fur coat for Christmas, a diamond ring, a Cadillac car, and everything. Love makes me treat you the way that I do.